We are now back in Fred Hellerman's living room.
Oh,
It is now May 26, 2016, and we're continuing our conversation with Fred. We are joined today by Susan Lardner, who herself has a very interesting background and career, and along with Fred is going to help us remember their lives in Weston starting in around 1970. So welcome, Susan, to the show.
Thank you.
Part two.
Glad to be here.
So when we last left our story, we had talked about your arrival in Weston and how Harold Leventhal, the Weaver's manager, had purchased a home near Cobb's Mill and was influential in bringing you up here. And as a result, you became interested in Weston, and eventually you bought a house in which we are sitting today.
I checked with one of Harold's daughters and found
Mhm.
out that he bought his house in 1968 and
Okay.
Fred bought this house in 1969.
69.
Although Fred had been up here before visiting other people,
Mm-hmm.
not in the
yeah,
house purchasing business.
Mm-hmm.
they'd be coming up there, for a weekend,
Right.
and I just fell in love with that immediately. And it was a very, very important place for me.
So in the summer of 1970, you two were married right here on this property.
From here, from this
Under
house.
the tree by Jane Atkinson. Oh no, she did.
No.
She did Caleb's wedding. Sorry,
Right.
by
It was Shook.
Euclid Shook.
Euclid
Shook.
Shook. Yes.
Yes,
Sorry,
we-
I forgot.
And
About Jane
I
Atkinson was much
I
later.
got that because
Under
we
that big
It's in the story, but
yeah.
Right. The New York Times did a very interesting description of
And
your
in-
wedding.
and in Newsweek it was written up because we were the first we were the vanguard of the new Charlotte Curtis New York Times social page. She decided to jazz it up.
So we're honored
And
here in Weston to have been part of that. The description is somewhat colorful. of
Oh, it
the
was a
wedding.
wonderful,
there's
wonderful wedding
a couple
we
of
had.
errors in it.
Yeah,
I won't specify.
yeah. Well, it was very well described in the newspapers at the time.
And is the rumor that the number of your guests went skinny dipping, naked
No,
after the wedding? Is that factually correct?
absolutely
No.
not.
It's,
Harold
okay.
Leventhal?
So-
No.
Right. So you deny that.
Well, we had a lot of strange people.
That's not in there.
No, that's in another article. I
Oh.
found another article that says that.
Not true.
No, but it was a
Two
swell
respectable
wedding.
bunch.
I see Alan Arkin was there.
That's right, Alan.
Alan Arkin was there.
My uncle and aunt, Ring Jr. and
Mhm.
Francis,
Right, Francis.
my sister and brother.
We had all kinds of other people there. I can't remember.
Well, those
How
were
did
the
you
main ones.
know? How did you know Alan Arkin?
How do you know Alan Arkin? Oh God, no.
Through Harold or singing.
Well, we know him from singing. Actually, I knew Alan from the time he was living in California. He wasn't an actor then. He wasn't a singer then. He wasn't anything then.
Mm-hmm.
He was a 17-year-old or 15-year-old living there. And it's just a few years later that he came to New York and
Was it
Beginning
Almanac
of a-
Singers or what group?
No,
was
no. No, he came
it?
into,
Babysitters?
I'm not exactly sure what he came into, but he did end up at Bennington College because Bennington was, they were in a drama school
Okay.
up there, and they had no actors up there. They were all girls up there, so they needed male singers. So Alan got a job.
So he was originally a singer.
He was a would-be actor.
He was part of a group, a singing group though, well known.
No,
Almanac Singers, no?
No, he wasn't well known there. Nobody.
I didn't mean that Bennington, but at some point in his life, he was part of a singing group.
Oh, well, that came a little bit
Much
later.
later? Oh.
He joined a singing group there, and very, very successful. Very successful singing group. And
Babysitters?
it became a little.
Was that the name of the group, the Babysitters?
The babysitters
Was one group.
was. The babysitters.
Never mind.
Okay. Well, enough about Alan Arkin.
He knows him through the music and theater business.
And your uncle Ring Lardner Jr. you mentioned was
Yes.
there.
I can't remember. I meant to check when they bought their house over in Stony Brook, but it was very nice to have them here.
It was very nice having them here, yeah. And actually, it was coming down to, they lived up in they had been living up in.
They lived in New Milford for a while because when he was blacklisted,
Yeah.
he had to live.
After he got out of jail, he moved.
But they were basically New Yorkers, and they moved here.
Mm-hmm.
And they moved because we were here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were here, and they would come and visit us, and they knew a lot of people there, and a lot of actors and a lot of people, and so it was a wonderful
was a
place
natural
for them,
thing.
a wonderful place for us,
Right.
to have them here all the time.
You mentioned that you still miss Ring Jr.
Oh yes, they were very wonderful people. I played tennis with
That's right.
with
Ring.
Ring a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We have a picture out there of the whole family gathering for
Oh yeah.
for Ring and Francis's 80th birthday party
Right.
over in Stony Brook.
I wanted to go back a little bit with you, Susan, and just trace your steps to, you had a
Yeah.
career of your own, and you're the kind of process by which you arrived at Weston with Fred.
I arrived at Weston with Fred. I would say the main incentive was I reached a point in my life when I wanted to have children, and I happened to know Fred at that time. We had met around the 66 or 67, and what with one thing and another, we decided to go for that. And Fred wanted to, sort of on a parallel thing, Fred had wanted to have a country house. And he did some looking around, some in Stockbridge where he had worked up with Arlo on the movie, but eventually coming down here because of Harold. And I was prepared to move, I wanted to have a baby, and that was it, and I moved here because Fred moved here. We didn't get married for a while because his mother was sick and we were waiting. We were 4 months pregnant. She was recovered so that she could come to the wedding, right?
Oh.
I remember that. But anyway, that's how I landed here. And sometimes I say, what am I doing here? Because I still think of myself as a New Yorker.
A New Yorker.
I go to New York. My doctors are in New York. My dentist, my sister. So I'm less of a Westonite than Fred is.
Right. So here's an interesting question. Obviously, you were indirectly affected by the blacklisting. Your family was affected, and Fred, of course, was big time.
It was really
that
accidental.
Was that a coincidence?
I mean,
Just a total
obviously,
coincidence?
politically, Fred and I are generally on the same wavelength, but it was the blacklist is not really a connection. I mean, it is a connection, but it's an accidental one.
So, okay, now we'll move to Weston around 1970 when you all joined hands and were here. So tell us a little bit about Weston in that time. For example, Town Center was a little different than it is
Talking
today.
to you when this all came up, I remembered. I don't remember the market at all from those days. But I remember that on the corner, maybe where the bank is now, there was a beauty parlor, and there was a drugstore. Who was running it at that time? I can't remember. But the drugstore had a soda fountain. And that behind the fountain was Ethel Keene. Is it a name
Right.
that is familiar to anybody? You're too young. I think
That's right.
Keene Park over on the river is
Keene
named
Park.
after her.
Okay.
was named after her.
But check it out anyway.
Because
I
there
don't
was a counter in there in the
Right, that's
drugstore
not a
there.
fountain. And the only other thing I remember from the time is the hardware store was run by two brothers. I don't think they were twins, but
Mm-hmm.
and
And so that little thing on River Road, there
Park.
became a little
playground,
little
children's playground.
park.
Oh,
And they
okay.
named it for her.
And they named it in her honor.
For whatever reason, I don't know. But
Yeah.
I just remember her as somebody behind the fountain.
And did you take your kids there? Was that?
that
No, our
park?
kids
particular place?
were too old.
No,
but,
we did take them there. We did. There weren't
You
too
did, yeah.
Yeah, not a lot.
Eventually, they got too old.
Yes, and they brought one of their kids there. I went
Oh, is
there
that
with
right?
Caleb and his
And
son.
how about the famous lunchbox? Was that
Silas.
there at that time?
No, that came many
No, although
years later.
there was a lunchbox, and the dry cleaner was in a different place. That was where the market is, sort of on the corner, across from the liquor store. And I guess the liquor store was there, but I remember the beauty parlor because it seems so strange now that there was such a thing. I never went to it. But
How about Weston schools? Did your kids go to the Weston schools?
kids went to Weston schools.
Oh,
The
they
first
were
place we
wonderful
went to
schools.
was the Fort Weston Co-op, and I
So it
remember
was a joint school
over
system.
at the Unitarian Church, which
Mhm.
I assume is still there.
Oh, this is preschool.
preschool,
Yeah, preschool.
nursery school. They both went there, and with Simeon, I had to when he was 3, I had to spend a year in the corner. He was happy as long as I was over there in the corner, but I could not leave without creating chaos.
That's again not a unique parental
no,
experience.
But I don't. There weren't too many mothers who
No.
It was a good school. It was
spent
a
a
good
year
school,
there.
though.
It was a great place. And then, yes, they did go to the Weston schools until 9th grade. And then we decided, Fred and I felt that there was a bigger world out there, that when you become a teenager in Weston, you're pretty limited.
Mhm.
And we decided they should go to Andover, which made them quite miserable. Because, of course, at the age of 12 or so,
They
you
had-
have a lot of friends and attachments, and
Mhm.
we had to battle them.
Mhm.
But they went and enjoyed it and did well.
Was that were they commuting or were they living
No,
boarding?
boarding school. Yeah. I remember one of the things I remember about the school is running a carpool. This was, I think, either for the nursery school or the elementary. I drove a Volkswagen Beetle.
Mhm.
I had 4 or 5 children packed into it. I smoked. There was no such thing as seatbelts. That's like the beauty parlor.
A vestige.
But I picked up kids along Good Hill Road and one on Steep Hill. I can't remember his name now. But and then I kept an eye on things at the schools, just because the kids were both very bright, and I wanted to be sure that they were being taken care of.
The kids were very well taken care of in
For the most part, they were.
schools.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Because the schools here were just absolutely wonderful. Really
There was a wonderful
school.
math teacher in elementary for Simeon called Diane Besh, who gave him special attention, and the greatest of all the teachers, I think, was Doris Fiatakis.
Ah, well,
Doris.
she's so special. That,
She was just wonderful.
She
For
retired
Simeon,
just a couple of years ago.
I've seen her recently because
Yeah.
I work for Literacy Volunteers now, and she came. I think she does too. But anyway, she got in touch with me.
Fantastic.
Yeah, she
no,
was.
she's a wonderful
she was
character.
wonderful.
Wonderful friend.
And what any specific instances with Doris that you can
Well,
recall?
Simeon was involved in drama, and she had all kinds of special programs for certain kids, and she took care of the kids that would ordinarily have been bullied, maybe, and she was just amazing. There was something called Olympics. It wasn't called Olympics of the Mind because that was a copyrighted Odyssey of the Mind that Simeon and Caleb maybe both were involved in, and I went on a couple of trips.
Yeah,
one to
she's
Michigan and one to somewhere else.
She's always been very, very involved with all kinds of things, and has won all kinds of awards you know, and very deservedly, you know. No, she's a very wonderful character in
And
Weston.
she's still here and
Still
around,
participating.
Yeah.
And I do, the one other person I want to mention is Cindy Brown, who was Caleb's first grade teacher, and I still see her at the Y.
Oh my goodness.
And I say to people, Cindy Brown, she was my son's, now 45 years ago, or 40 years ago, she was Caleb's first grade teacher.
So it was the population was about 3/4 of what it is today. Do you have a sense of a difference in the community from then till now?
I just have a sense of gradually more and more gigantic cars and houses, but I don't have a particular sense of more
Mhm.
people. But
When you
very struck by the size of the cars and
and when you drive around Weston today, do you have a different, other than the big cars, do you have a different sense of the
not
community?
really. I
So-
guess it is more built up
Mm-hmm.
somewhat, but
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether it's the retreat that you experienced when you came here in 70-ish. Is it market? If you came up today from New York
I
City,
wouldn't
would
say
you
it's-
experience it the
I
same way?
wouldn't say it's a big difference. But we have such a nice long driveway. we're tucked away a little more than
Mhm.
some places might be, and I'm much more aware of changes in Westport than I am of anything around here.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Fred, you built your studio.
Yes, so I built a recording studio here, and it was wonderful.
Mhm.
It was-
Would people come up from New York City
oh yeah,
to
people
record?
would come up from New York City. They would, and this is where I worked with them as well, and you know, did a lot of recording
I
here.
remember you
Mhm.
did one with Pete.
Oh, I did a couple things with Pete
At least-
Seeger
at
and
least
a
one.
bunch of other people as well. It was a wonderful place for me to work, and
It was a separate building out
yeah,
here.
It
separate-
started in the bedroom, which it became a child's bedroom, but it
Mhm.
started in a tiny room in the back. And Fred kept buying more and more equipment.
Yeah, in those
electronic
days,
equipment.
that's right.
And then we connected the studio to the house.
And any memorable? You did some recording.
well, actually, as a
with
matter of fact, that house out, you know, back was originally a
Garage.
garage, a dirt covered garage, you know, and I turned it into a recording studio.
Mhm.
What can I say? Yeah, that's the place where I wrote music. It was
That
That was-
became his home.
that was my
In there
my,
all the time.
my musical home. It's where anything I ever learned for myself about music, I learned in there,
Mhm.
and I wrote some very important music in there.
And how about there's a mention of a theater workshop?
Oh, well, it wasn't. It was. It involved a lot of people in the Weston who were in the arts.
Was it started
in other
by
words,
Keir DeLay?
well, Keir DeLay was living here, and Keir was a good friend, and
Ayla started.
yeah, well, Hayla started, of course, and her husband,
Mhm.
and I was very, very close to Hayla, and I'd written a couple of shows with her, and she was a wonderful, wonderful character, and a wonderful actress,
Mhm.
and a wonderful everything,
So what did the theater workshop do?
Oh, the theater workshop. Well, I think that Haley was very responsible for getting together a lot of people who were trying to get people all together in the
Mhm.
theater in the theater industry, and and that started a theater workshop. The whole idea was for people to be able to try things, and it was a wonderful. It's a place where you could go, you could fail, you could do things that you wouldn't have a chance to do anywhere else, and you know, it was a wonderful attempt for people to
Now,
start.
did you put on local productions?
No, the
did that
whole
work?
idea was not to have. I mean, for example, at the beginning there were a few celebrities, some people from Hollywood, you know, who were living in the area, you know, who were, and at the very beginning we would begin to get some newspaper people, you know, who want to do it, interviews, and you know, and the other was out, out. That's not what it's for. It's not for, you know, for it's our private thing to do, and it's not. We're not looking for publicity, you know. And it was,
So no audience.
no audiences,
That's-
no, absolutely no
Huh.
audiences.
And where did you prepare this?
Well, at first it would be, I don't know.
I'm trying to remember where the first site was. It's in East
Yeah.
Norwalk now.
Somehow we found a place to
Huh.
do it.
Did you
Okay.
develop the Thurber show there through that?
Oh yes, well no.
Oh, Don Elliott.
Don Elliott,
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
you know, who did
They lived in
wonderful.
Stony Brook, yes. That
Who
was,
lived in Stony
they were
Brook.
friends of ours in the early
You know,
days.
very good friends.
Mm-hmm.
Right, he had done a Thurber show with Halen.
He had done a very successful Thurber show. With,
And you developed another one in the
a
theater
different
workshop.
one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's the one that he developed as a, you know, for a show that was running already, but he did all the
Music.
music for
Right.
you know, for it, and wonderful music that he did, and you know, and that's what he did. After that was running, and Hala started to put together that Thurber Carnival. And
Mhm.
Right.
she had
Thurber
produced that. But after that, she wanted to do another Thurber show with, you know, full of a lot of Thurber things, of course. But she wanted to have little musical shows inside the thing, not just writing some incidental music,
Mhm.
which he had done for the first show, and he did some wonderful music there. But now she wanted to do a show where there were songs that were done in the show
Mm-hmm.
itself.
Show within the show.
Yeah, and that's what she came to me for. And you know, and I worked on a show for her, which was a very good show. We did it a couple of times, a couple places, and so on.
I think it was performed, I remember, in Denver, which is where Halen
Yeah.
had some kind of a
Yeah.
base.
Right, we had done it in a big show.
And around
in-
here a couple of times at least.
Well, yeah, we also did in the summer workshop, in the summer
Westport.
theater.
Mhm.
You know, we did it here.
Now, would you perform in this?
Oh,
or-
yeah,
or you
yeah,
actually
yeah.
would-
You were performing?
Yeah, I was performing in it, or was I? I'm not sure
I
if
remember Tom's.
I mean, I had written all the stuff for it.
Right.
It was nice. It was,
So this theater group, that was pretty important. you.
No, it
Well, the
wasn't
theater
really
workshop.
terribly
The third
What?
workshop
Oh, the
was very
theater.
important to you
Yeah, theater workshop was something
Right.
else.
for a long time.
That was, yeah, for a long time.
Just, but in that vein, then you worked on the Outlivers.
Oh, the
That's how I first met you, because you were looking for a copy of the Outlivers.
Right.
Well,
So
well,
recently.
no, what happened
Right.
was the Outlivers, they were doing this movie of, you know, of it, and so they'd asked me to do a movie of,
Music.
no, not music, well, yeah, I mean, it would involve music for it, Um,
Sort of a soundtrack.
yeah, soundtrack for the
Mhm.
movie, and it was a good movie, some good music.
Yeah. Well, Christopher was the narrator of the
Yeah.
movie. Did you get a? I don't remember from watching. I did watch it at one point. Did you get personally in the movie?
No, I got credit for the music.
Right.
I don't think Fred was in it.
You were not in
No,
it.
but I don't think I was.
A lot of local celebrities were in the movie. Any other memories of the Outlivers? That was what, the 200th anniversary of the town or something.
Yeah, well, it was a good movie. It was a good movie, and it was a good music score. I was very pleased with that.
Mm-hmm. And while you were up here, did you ever perform locally, like at the Reading Roadhouse or something like that?
No, never did that.
Mm-hmm. How about Weston politics or Weston boards of?
We
Education
never
or
were on
anything?
any boards. I think we went to budget meetings occasionally
Mhm.
at one
Yeah.
stretch of time,
Yeah.
supporting the education budget, which was always seemed to be
Well-
a big precarious issue. I do remember going to a peace rally with Simeon in a little folding baby carriage, and there was a photo
in
the
Weston?
paper in the center.
Oh,
where
okay.
we,
No, this is in Westport.
Mhm.
I was in Weston
Oh, you were.
at the Weston Center at
Oh, I
this
see.
peace rally,
Yeah.
and you
The
were
Weston
probably
Center
there too.
Peace Rally.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, it was such a refreshing thing, and I felt so good about
Mhm.
being there, and I felt so good about because this was just about the time that we'd moved into the house up here, and I felt very much at home. This is our home, and of course it was the same time when I was saying that all my friends were all getting subpoenaed, what I called subpoenas
Subpoena envy.
envy. All my friends.
So
It's an exciting time.
it was that it was
Definitely.
that it
I
was.
miss it.
So, well, if we wanted, again, off topic, if we wanted to recreate those times, what we would do is institute a draft. If you had a draft, you would
Including
recreate
women.
Vietnam right now. That's an aside which we can edit out. Okay, so let's talk about
I'm with you.
your main social activities in Weston, in particular some of the interesting people that you knew in Weston at the time, some of which you've talked about previously. So let's talk about Alice Delamar. How did you know Alice, and what?
Well, I never got terribly friendly with Alice. My most basic, things were on to Sandy Jackson and Gene Watts.
Mm-hmm.
Gene Watts, the brilliant painter who had that fantastic, figure there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did she know Alice? Is that how
oh yeah,
Alice
yeah.
became the
That's
connection?
how that.
They were,
She
as I understand it, they were kind of tenants on the general Delamar property, right?
yeah, but she wasn't paying for it.
No, but
No.
she was the kind of patroness.
Yeah,
Alice Delamar had.
She was sort of a patron of the
Yeah,
arts.
she was
and
a
she
patron
would
of-
put
yeah.
people up on her
Yeah.
property, which I guess was very important
Yeah.
to the development.
And of course, she was right just across the road
Haven.
from them.
Mm-hmm.
And Sandy was he's the one that kept the stream all stocked with trout.
Mm-hmm.
It's a thing that he had to do for Alice, and that's so that came time. What do we have for dinner? Oh, let's have some trout today. And Sandy and I would go out to the stream, pick up some trout, and we'd have dinner.
That was next to the Cobb's Mill, the stream next to the Cobb's
Yeah.
Mill.
the stream right behind their house. It's so, but sometimes we'd go over there and we'd swim in the pool there, and in Alice's house, but I never really knew her.
Mhm. Tell us about Ralph Allswang.
Ralph Allswang was a wonderful character. Ralph Allswang was, well, first of all, he was an architect. And there were a lot of roads, a lot of houses right along
Good Hill.
Good Hill that Ralph had built. They had a whole bunch of them along the way. But Ralph had also been a scenic designer, a Broadway scenic designer. And he was the designer for a lot of very significant.
And he was in Weston.
And he lived right on.
Fred.
No.
When Fred told me that when he first knew him at Allswang, he lived up here in one of these houses on Good Hill. But when we knew him together, he was on Farrell. Is that part of Weston?
When he was on
just on the edge.
He was introduced there when I was with Sandy and Gene. Gene. They're the ones that brought me over to Ralph.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that Ralph was a good left winger.
Mm-hmm.
And
he was a great guy, both he and his wife Betty.
Yeah, and his wife Betty was a swimmer. She was with the World's Fair, so whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they were wonderful people.
And their son Ralph Jr. became a photographer, the Clinton photographer, White House photographer.
White House
okay.
photographer. I don't know what's happened to him since. But
Well, I'm sure he's fine.
He's doing okay, I'm sure. Antonio
Frescone.
Frasconi. That woodcut of Woody Guthrie is his. He was a famous woodcut artist. That's woodcut.
Also left
Wow.
wing. Nice.
Yeah, left wing.
Good.
Well,
There's a theme.
Enthusiastic.
He did a lot of stuff for the magazine,
The Nation?
The Nation. He did a lot of stuff.
And how did you know him?
Yeah.
Because that way.
Just-
Yeah.
I don't
But
know.
no, but he lived in
Normal.
Norwalk,
Mm-hmm.
and so we got. Well, actually, I'd known him from. No, I'd known him even well before
I
that.
think you did, but I don't
When
remember how.
Pete Seeger, before he moved up to,
Beacon.
he had a house on McDougal Street in New York, and that's where
So
he lived.
then you were in that neighborhood.
That's where the Weavers first got together,
Right.
and he was a big center of a lot of good activity there, and he had different people living in there with him. And Frasconi lived in there
Mhm.
Did he?
with him for a while, yeah.
And how about Keir DeLea? You mentioned him briefly.
Oh well, yeah, very friendly with Keir.
Now we know him. The way I would know the name is from 2001
That's his big. That's
Uh,
what makes
All kinds of things.
yeah.
his moment of fame. But
Space Odyssey.
I thought that Keir and Susie were key people in the foundation of the theater workshop.
Oh yes, no, and they were.
Oh, okay.
They were very
Mhm.
much so.
Getting back to the basics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So here's a name for you, Fred Brooks.
That's me.
We found
So tell me
another-
about Fred Brooks.
We found another pseudonym the other day. What was that on a book? Fred, also an FB. Okay, tell about Fred Brooks.
Yeah. So who's Fred Brooks?
Fred Brooks was for a long time when I was blacklisted, and if I wanted anything done, I would use a different name. So I used a different name. But as a matter of fact, yeah, there's a little thing. I had done a lot of work with Belafonte. Belafonte was an old friend of mine, and I worked for him a lot. And I wrote and recorded a lot of songs and arranged a lot of things for him. So, and Harry and I have been very good friends through the years. And he told me. I would go up to Harry's office. If I had some new songs, I'd go up and so I was up there one day, and I had, we were bullshitting in his office, in a nice plushy office, and so we were talking, and just then. He had a guy at the time who was his conductor, and so I was talking to Harry, and the door opens, and some guy walks in, and Harry says, "Oh, Fred." This is, told me his name. He says, last month I was in Nairobi or somewhere, and, for a month or so, and I brought this guy with me, and while I was there, he comes in and he said, "Hey, Harry, while I've been here, I've been going through a bunch of files, like you said, we should go. I went through a bunch of files, and I came across a whole bunch of files here with another conductor. I found a lot of good scores here, by a good conductor, some guy by the name of Fred Brooks." And so Harold straightened him out and said, this is Fred Hellerman. Wow!
So eventually you were able to give up Fred Brooks and become Fred Hellerman again.
Yeah, all over the place.
So Woody Guthrie, you have
Woody, of course, I knew him very well. All the time, when I'd be down half the time he spent at Pete Seeger's house on, Bleecker Street.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was away, Woody was all over the place in California, and he's.
You have talked about visiting him in the hospital with Harold. That was sort of an interesting story.
Yeah, that came.
Of course.
That was very. And we were very close to Woody. Just as a guy that we knew constantly,
Mm-hmm.
a very significant guy. Wasn't well known very much, but
in his day.
But we certainly.
And tell us about the visit to the hospital then.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, when Woody was somehow he ended up in New Jersey in a hospital, in a mental hospital in New Jersey. And as far as I knew, Harold and I were the only ones who knew where he was. And so Harold and I, one Saturday morning, we got in the car and we drove out to wherever it was, and to see Woody. And that was an experience. And it went like this. We went in and just can we help you? Yeah. Well, we came in to visit Woody Guthrie, and we want to find out. We're friends of his, and we don't know anything about him because he has no, whatever about it. So they put us up with this doctor who was going to take care of it, so you can go see him. Now, I don't know if you remember a character in a movie, Hollywood movie. 'Cause he was in there all the time. He was always the William, the character, always the German character. He knows everything. Yeah. So and that's who we got. We got to see.
The doctor.
And we got to see the doctor, and he goes to the file. He says, "Let's see, William." He goes to the file. Let's see, William. What's his name? Oh yeah. Okay. Woody Guthrie. Very sick man. Well, what's the matter with him? Delusions. He's got delusions. Terrible. He says he writes hundreds of songs. He says he writes all. He can't write any songs. He doesn't. And oh yeah, hey, he's got the most songs here. Very sick man, very sick man. And we'd say, well, he says that he wrote 1,000 songs. I said, well, yes, he has. But he doesn't hear it, you know. You're a very sick man. And we take him, we take him for a walk. What do you have enough money for cigarettes? Do you have, enough money for, whatever? He said, oh yeah, no, I have such a good time here. There's a place, I'm in heaven here. And they all take good care of me, and they give me good food and good cigarettes and good everything, And he said, but hey, you don't have to worry about me. I mean, I'm just having this, I can stay here forever, And he said, and first of all, and other things, it's the best place in the world you could be, because I can get here and I could say, I could say all kinds of things that I wanted to be said. They said, and this is the place where I could say anything I want, and and you say the things they stick you in jail. So this was a
must have been very poignant.
It was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time that we had a wonderful time with him.
But he was sick.
Right.
Right. That's why he was there.
I'm not sure.
They picked him up.
No, actually, no. We didn't actually take him out. We arranged that.
No, I didn't say you took him out. I'm
Right.
saying he was in the hospital because
Yeah.
someone had picked him up.
No, they picked him up on the highway.
Right.
Just as
A
an
drunk.
alcoholic.
Right.
But he was.
But he also had Huntington.
Had Huntington's career, but nobody knew what that was.
Right.
Uh,
Well, let's talk about Arlo.
You get
Oh, well, Arlo, he would come up to our office and he'd be singing all day, because where else did he have to go, he had our office on 57th Street, our publishing office, Harold and I, and so that's it,
Alice's Restaurant.
Yeah, so tell us about, you produced the movie Alice's
Well,
Restaurant.
Okay, so before that, Arlo was going to tell that story about the Alice, the Alice's Restaurant and this and that, the other thing. Well, now that's spread over WBAI.
Yes.
Mhm.
They
You know,
did.
constantly. Ultimately, you know, everybody knew it, you know, and so we were able to, Harold and I were able to get Warner Brothers
Recorded?
recorded. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, you know, I got all that done. We worked out a good deal, and
Mhm.
so on. It was clearly
Got the song
an
recorded.
easy thing
Mhm.
to get recorded. You know, and you know, I produced it and everything else. I made a stupid mistake, and the mistake goes like this. So now I was going to have to bring them into the studio, and there's a wonderful studio that on 50
Was in New York
Street.
somewhere.
But it was a great studio, and so I said, okay, look, we'll go in there and we'll record that. We'll get a bunch of people in there. So I made the mistake of getting all of his friends into this thing, you know, to do it. And, you know, so I set up, you know, 2 or 3, and we recorded, and it wasn't quite as good. And I realized the mistake I made was I sang this thing for a whole audience that had heard it 1,000,000 times already.
Mhm.
They were yawning a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, no, they weren't yawning, but you
Something
know,
like
it didn't have.
Right. Didn't have the energy.
Interesting. So you wanted to have a recording with a live audience
Oh yeah.
as opposed to just a studio,
Yeah.
highly produced
Yeah.
recording. Interesting.
So that's what I did, you know. So I got rid of them, and I just got a whole bunch of people who hadn't heard it. Yeah, and then, but still, you know, it came out better than it was the first time, but it didn't come out
The record.
quite as, you know, for the record,
Mhm.
quite as good. And so I spent a month, because, you know, I had a lot of tapes of stuff. So I spent a month putting in all the laughs.
I remember
I mean,
this process.
taking the laughs, you know, as they were there, but taking those laughs, but
Strategic points.
doing a
there's
little bit more.
Very
little
interesting.
enhancing.
And one of the big things that I had there was that no one ever said that any of those laughs were.
They didn't realize.
Because they weren't. They were real laughs that I was able to stick in there.
Right.
You know, with the
And you
right.
did that work in here, in this studio.
I did that thing where
I remember.
I did that work right in my
That's what I'm
home
saying.
studio.
Your studio,
Right.
right?
Oh
here.
yeah, right
Yeah.
here. Yeah, and then of course came the film. So.
Mhm.
Was that Harold's idea, or how did that get started?
Well, the whole deal was to do number one
The record.
the record, and you know, and the
Oh.
movie.
So it was always contemplated to do the movie.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that was all part of it.
Probably move on. How about Peter, Paul, and Mary?
Beautiful. Well, they really talk of themselves as the children of the Weavers, and it is pretty accurate.
Mhm. Yeah, if you think about it.
Mary, I've known since long before, since she was about 15.
Washington Square, right?
And, you know, with 2 collies constantly,
Mhm.
and so on. And, yeah, so I've known her for a long time.
And we talked about Harry Belafonte.
Belafonte is I've known him from the time when he
Cooking in the village.
when he had a little place in the village,
Mm-hmm.
struggling to get through. But I've known him for a long time.
Well, he became huge with the calypso hits.
And what happened?
Specifically that show. I mean,
Well, what
New
happened?
Faces. Sorry.
No. What happened was, and he wanted Bob the Cormier to come in to help him with these
Arrangements.
calypso things,
Hmm.
and so that's where he got Bob
Huh.
to do.
I remember that album very
to
well.
do all that stuff. Yeah,
It was huge. It was huge.
Explosive. Yeah.
Yes.
And he didn't deserve it. Nobody deserved it as well as he did.
So I just one last personality would be the obvious one, Pete Seeger. And your collaboration with him, you've mentioned him several times, obviously.
Oh well, yeah.
And we all miss Pete. He was an institution in this area.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, he's there's no one comes close to what he's done. I mean, I've had big arguments with him.
Mm-hmm.
I've had big arguments with him. For example, where I remember there was one point where kids were coming up to him, and he wants this, he wants that, they want this, they want that, and he got into some kind of kick where he was saying, "Well, forget about whatever you know, anything you ever know about it, forget about it, just go and do it," And when he went through the whole thing, don't go studying
Don't
any
learn
of that
things.
stuff. Don't learn any of that. And I said, Peter, how can you say that? How can you tell kids to take books and to burn them? And really we used to get the big arguments about that because this was the thing he was into right now. And we had some pretty tough arguments, he and I. But at the same time, he was always into things that, and I made fun of a lot of it. I even wrote one thing which I don't play anymore because it was one of making such fun of him, of all the thing that I did that I wrote. I
I don't remember. I remember you did a Bob Dylan joke thing about wind or
About what?
about something related to blowing in
Blowing
the wind.
in the
but
wind.
You did some kind of a wind song, but that wasn't had to do
No,
with Pete.
that wouldn't repeat.
Mm-hmm.
But at any rate, it's when all this thing of cleaning up the rivers, and this and that,
Right,
the other
right,
thing.
right.
I did a thing that made fun of it, and I just
Maybe not
I
now.
just put it away.
So,
It's a very sacred topic.
last couple of questions. Do you listen to music today?
No,
Okay.
Why is that?
I find it is so anti-music. It's such crap.
And it's inaccessible. That's why I don't listen. I used
Well,
to
it's-
listen to music on the radio. The music is not accessible anymore. You don't hear it unless you're somebody with this.
Well, you can, right. I mean, well,
Or a
that's
phone.
another discussion for another
it
time,
is another
I think.
discussion, but
You're
I
right,
mean,
yeah.
I've lost connection with music. I hear the music I hear where I learn about what's going on at all is there's a couple of classes at the Y where somebody plays tapes that she's made
Mhm.
of combinations of different things, and there's a group called Playing for Change that I found on the computer that does wonderful stuff. So, but it's very not too accessible in general music,
She's been
the
wonderful.
way it used to be.
She's been absolutely wonderful for me. I mean, all kinds of things she's discovered for me. You know, that she's been listening to it and say, oh, gee, yeah, you know, like that Stephen Foster stuff that she came up with.
Yeah, there was a wonderful
Yeah,
CD that was put out of Stephen Foster's songs done by various people, including Mavis Staples
Really?
and
That goes
other
back.
folk singers and stuff.
Hmm.
Wonderful stuff.
it was a wonderful discovery of, you know, things, you know, she,
I'm still searching for my Stephen Foster songbook that's in your studio somewhere.
no, I don't.
I know.
I think we should wrap up. Any other thoughts you'd like to share? Any thoughts of your legacy or any other profound thoughts that you might have?
Do you have a profound thought?
I don't have a profound thought.
Okay.
Let me look on the page.
Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate the time and the memories and sharing with us your experiences. It's great. Really appreciate it.
Well,
It's been fun.
it's nice that somebody
It's
thinks
pretty
something of
interesting.
it.
Thank you again.